CONvergence YouTube achievement unlocked.
So what were the big books of your...
Oh gosh, you know, the book list questions always make my mind completely blank, as though I have
been
a reader my whole life.
I know It is by Stephen King.
Yes, it was a huge book of my childhood. The sort of standard children's literature, The Never-Ending Story, and The Phantom Tollbooth, and Alice Through the Looking Glass, not Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan. Tamlin by Pamela Dean was a really big one for me.
To a lot of people.
Yeah, to a lot of people, but... I know that there are books, and
books are good.
I have to write down a list, because the fact that whenever anybody asks me to list my favorite books, my mind goes completely blank is ridiculous. Lord of the Rings and Narnia are also big ones for me. Lord of the Rings would have been my favorite novel until Little Big. I mean, that's what I would always say. And I was a Kenya speaking geek in high school.
Lord of the Rings is an interesting one because I know a lot of writers go back to it later and have trouble with some of
Yeah, no, not me. I love it to pieces. And the thing is that I started out in poetry, so a lot of my direct influence are poets, are Diana Kosky, Sylvia Plath, T.S. Eliot, Anne Sexton, Dylan Thomas. Yeah, Under Milkwood, Dylan Thomas is my favorite play. And like a lot of theater as well, because my parents were both in theater when I was a kid, so Thornton Wilder. Lorca, who I actually found through his plays and then discovered his poetry, and he's one of my favorite poets, E. Cummings. So like the poets I can just rattle off, because that was one of my really big loves.
Yates.
I'm all right with Yates. I'm more of a Keats girl. But yeah, so and then, like, I'm trying to picture my mantle, because that's where all our favorite books are, and Milorad Pavic is a really big influence on me. He's a Serbian writer. Winter's Tale by James, it's Halpern. Is it Halpern? I think it's Halpern, yeah. Is an amazing book. I don't like any of his other books, so I can't say that he is an influence on me, but Winter's Tale is an astonishingly good book, and I read it right after Little Big. I read them back to back, and they have a lot of strange similarities. I was trying to figure out how one writes a truly long novel, and so those were the two books I picked to teach myself, and they turned out to be just two of my favorite novels of all time.
Well, now, with you and a lot of other people of this generation, it's not just the books that have influenced your career. Oh, and that's one of the reasons why we got you into the Vanish thing, because we know that television, movies, music, all of it contributes to.
Yeah, I'm a media junkie. Also, my parents met at UCLA Film School, and my father had meant to be a film director. Surprise! It turns out to be a bum deal to raise a kid on that kind of salary, and so he quit and went into advertising, and my mother ended up going into political science. She was a professor. But it means that throughout my entire childhood, my dad made us watch movies in a way that few fathers make their kids watch movies. We had to discuss it afterwards. So
you'd be sitting there and there's the cocktail.
Yeah. I mean, like, the thing is that movies are the language of my family. We don't talk about our feelings. We quote movies at each other and understand the subtext without having to be told. And so that's how I think normal humans communicate. That is not how normal humans communicate, I have learned. But but we have this sort of common language of these movies in my family that we've all seen. And I actually really love that, and I see that in the Vanish community too, that there are these movies and TV shows and books, that less books actually. I think that we've all seen TV and movies more in common than we've read books. It would be difficult to pull 50 people together at this con and find 10 books that they've all read in common.
Yes.
But we have a language, and so I feel at home because I can trade those quotes.
Yeah, I have a theory that almost every woman who writes fantasy who is from the age 30 to 45 is obsessed with Labyrinth.
Yes, well, we all are. Yes. Which had its 25th anniversary just a little while ago.
I believe one day we can trace. Someone
it's
can
not
write
just
an MFA paper.
It goes younger than 32 because I have cousins and they're equally obsessed with it.
My daughters are really good.
Yeah, I mean, Labyrinth
Bowie's
is one of my
Goblin
favorite.
King, I think, pops up in all these novels.
Yeah, I am certainly a Labyrinth girl, and I love Legend as well, which is slightly less popular, but still quite beloved. Yeah, I mean, movies and television, they are stories no less than books, and I think that television is actually really maturing as a medium right now. We have things like Mad Men and True Blood and Game of Thrones and these beautiful long-form shows that make movies feel really thin, because, we're only a season into Boardwalk Empire, and we're barely getting to know these people, but a movie's over in 2 hours. movies to me feel like short stories now, and television shows are like novels.
Do you think movies, though, once in the language of a film, is much more visual in the storytelling?
I think
That's
that
shorthand.
television shows look like movies now. There's very little, when you're talking about the marquee television shows,
Yeah.
not sitcoms and stuff
Right.
like that. But, you know, there's no difference in the visual style of Mad Men and a equal, you know, period
That's
movie.
something, yeah.
It looks exactly the same. And it's interesting because one of my favorite shows is kind of the show that started that trend, which was Twin Peaks.
Mhm.
It was really the first show that looked like a movie week in and week out. And I actually grew up quite near where that was filmed, and so I watch it and it feels like home to me because I grew up near that waterfall, and I know all those places. I know what they're actually called, and I've eaten cherry pie at that cafe, and it's, yeah, had that coffee, and so I loved listening. I love directors' commentaries. It was so cool to get to do a commentary here because I'm obsessed with them, and I love listening to the Twin Peaks commentary and them talking about how the visual style of that show really rippled out. If you look at the early X-Files, they might as well be filming on the same sets. And X-Files is another great example of how something that really changed the landscape of television. And I love cultural analysis of television movies. It's one of my hobbies.
Yeah, as seen in your blog.
As seen in my blog.
How much more time do we have?
We are coming up on 1, so if there's any final comments.
That seems good.
How you
Unless
liked
you have
it.
some other question.
How you liked the con? Anything?
Well, we
Con
did
was,
this at the
we
beginning.
did that at the beginning. Con was awesome.
Yeah, CONvergence. Oh. Well, the nice thing, I mean, that actually ties into what we just finished with. You know, one of the things I love about CONvergence is that it does embrace all these different geekery and media, so that someone can say, you know, so you don't have to just be on a literary panel or just go to
Right.
literary panels. You can be on a TV show.
Yeah,
Right.
and I mean, it's really encouraging to me that there can be a con this big that is not based in anime and comic books. It includes anime and comic
Yeah.
books, but you know, I feel welcome here. Whereas some of the Comic Cons and anime conventions, writers are, you know, the redheaded stepchild has to stand in the corner, and I don't feel like that at CONvergence. So it's really encouraging to me that this kind of thing can still exist in the world.